Welcome to Acorn to Oak with Penny Quayle-Pierce and co-host Matthew Donachie. Within each acorn, there is the DNA that strives to be a mighty oak tree. All it needs to reach its potential for greatness is to be activated. You are the acorn. On this show, we will share with you the tools and guidance you need to grow into the person you are meant to be. And now your host, Penny Quayle-Pierce and co-host Matthew Donachie.
Hi, good evening. It's Thursday the 10th of October and it's World Mental Health today. So Matthew and I wanted to talk about what good mental health is this evening, to just give you a bit of a heads up on how you can make sure mental health is cooking gas. So, I hope you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Really looking forward to tonight's show, with it being Mental Health Awareness Week, Day today. As I'm sure a lot of you have been having an interesting day. As we were just discussing, there seems to be a lot of stuff up for a lot of people, so it's good to pick a topic that's current.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of question traveling I'm feeling today. So moving from about a 3.5 hour trip, interesting, because the last part of it is on small. It's how when you're concentrating on driving, which obviously we forget sometimes, driving a lethal weapon, and it's very windy down in Cornwall today, windy and rainy, so it's a challenge on you, and I think it's really important to get good mental health allows you to be have resources and beck and call. And I definitely reach a chance this late and viewed as it's getting markets. Luckily, the that driving out. It's cooler. We don't know like in the temperature dropped. Definitely going into autumn. The leaves on the tree, and it's definitely the weather. We've lost the heat in the summer. Just he can have his, because one of the things that's really important with good mental health is our. Okay, I will try. Is this better? Hopefully, Chris.
Yeah, I can hear you more clearly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll keep on going, and so listeners can hear me, and hopefully this is better. We're just going to hand over to me where he can talk about here, because it's really important when we're dealing with mental health is to acknowledge how we're feeling and how we've done during the day, so that we can celebrate things that have gone our way and maybe look at things happen. So just handing you. Hopefully you can hear me a lot better than you have.
Yes, okay. Yeah, it's slightly better. So, I think it's a really interesting topic. When we talk about mental health, everyone looks at it from the sort of the negative side, that it's a bad thing and there's sort of something wrong with you. I know very much when I was dealing with mental health in my late 20s, early 30s, there was a lot of stigma around you sort of, you don't want to tell your friends because you don't want to be a burden. You don't want to tell work colleagues because you're worried about what people are going to think about you. There's this whole thing around it being a mental disorder. And when you look at the word mental, that's what we would class as lunatic, someone who's crazy, someone who doesn't have the right brain function, which is so far away from what mental health actually is. It creates this stigma where people don't feel like they can reach out because of guilt, shame, all sorts of different emotions. And for me, it got to a sort of like a snapping point before I actually admitted what was really going on and how I was feeling. And I think so. I prefer the term emotional imbalance, and all that means is that you've suppressed so many different emotions over your life that I would say you're emotionally full. So you could be watching a film, and something in that film happens, and you end up crying for an hour and not really know why. And it's because in that moment when you've allowed yourself to connect, or something's triggered an emotion within you, it's like all the sad that you've never felt or never felt safe to feel comes out. And you see that, and I saw it a lot in my own life, when you see young guys that sort of completely lose it in public and maybe hit someone or hit something, and you ask them afterwards what happened, and they said, oh, well, someone said I couldn't do what I wanted to, and you ask them, was your reaction relative to the situation? So somebody told you no, and you basically had a hissy fit, felt the anger, and again, it's feeling all the anger that it's never felt safe to feel. So I think when we talk about mental health, we sort of say, people see it as a negative thing, but we're coming from a different place. It's like you can have good mental health, and there is almost a scientific way of doing that. There's many very different tools out there to help with emotional balancing and feeling good. I use Reiki, and obviously the golden tool for me is Breath for Life breath work, and that's helping people deal with their sort of all of their emotions. And people sort of think that we only suppress the negative emotions like anger or sadness, but the truth is we suppress just as much joy as we do any other emotion. How many times as a kid were you told, sit down, be quiet and listen? And in that moment you could have been doing any number of things, and generally as a kid you're exploring, you pick something up, you look at that, you run around, you'll be sort of singing, whatever, you're in that joyous child state. And then an adult walks in, and because it's inconvenient for them at the time, they tell you off, when actually all you're doing is feeling joy. So as children, we naturally realise that we're being told off when we're being joyous, so let's not be as joyous. So we tend to suppress it. And for me, the important thing around mental health is dealing with your emotional baggage, whatever it is. I'm sure I've said on the show before, nobody's had a perfect life, and to me, mental health or emotional imbalance is everything's relative to your life. So you tend to, in England, have a little bit of like, my mental health's bigger than your mental health. So someone will say, oh, I've got depression, and then somebody's like, oh, well, I've got anxiety and depression. And then it's, oh, well, I've got bipolar and I'm depressed and I've got anxiety. And it's this whole, everything's relative to each person. So nobody's stuff is any worse than anybody else's, or it doesn't feel like that when you're in your own stuff. So even just anxiety could be just as bad for one person as sort of full-on depression for somebody else. We all have very different lives, and I think the important thing is, especially in England, we're making people aware of mental health, but it's kind of like, where are we actually going with it? Because talking about it is a great step, and obviously getting more people aware of it, and especially companies, so that they can be more mindful with their staff. But actually what we really need is action, and that's why I love Breath for Life, breath work, because it's an action tool, and it will allow you to deal with your emotional baggage so that there is more room for passion and joy, and more of the natural state. I know Penny will probably laugh at this. When I first started working with Penny, it was like, oh, I want to get rid of this anger. I just want to get it out. And Penny was like, no, don't do it. Because actually you want to raise the vibration of the anger, because the flip side of anger is passion. And actually some of the most angry people in the world are the most passionate, and it's because they're not seeing the flip side, that they're having the negative experience. So for me, it was kind of like I had to change my sort of empowering decision on, I'd prefer to raise the vibration of it rather than get rid of it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, and now I have bags of passion.
And part of the passion that you're feeling is also your unique genius. And I think, this is one of the things that, good mental health day. I mean, obviously it's the World Mental Health Day today. And I couldn't agree with you more around that mental. I mean, straight away it feels like there's a stigma. And, one of the things, obviously, for today is looking at global mental health education, awareness, advocacy against social stigmas. But it's also just looking at how we talk about mental health. And again, I couldn't agree with you more, Matthew, on getting away from mental health and actually looking at emotional health. And looking at how obviously their mental state is important, but it's not necessarily diagnosable mental health problems that are a problem. It's feeling down and not knowing what to do about it, having suicidal thoughts, because the person actually underneath the stigma of mental health, it's actually an emotional problem, or an emotional not understanding how to move their lives forward in a positive way. And it's so important, again, the good mental health characteristics are the ability for a person to fulfill key functions and activities, which include, and I wrote a list in the write-up for the show, the ability to learn. Well, it's learning and again, we'll bring in a small tool called reflection. It's looking at your day at the end of the day and going, how did it go? How was my day? Was my day good, bad, ugly? What did I learn from today? If I could do it again, what would I change? And what are the lessons and what have I learnt? And it's looking at that, and it's the ability to do that which helps us move forward in our lives. And I know, I can rant a little bit about this, but unless we reflect, how do we grow? And it is the ability on showing people who have got challenges in their lives how to grow themselves out of the state that they are in right here, right now. Because everybody has that ability to change. Everybody has that ability to make different decisions around their lives when they are shown and guided how to do so. Not everybody is taught these things as a child. Not everybody is taught these things as a teenager. And, it's no wonder that, in teenage years that people become muddled and confused and therefore depressed because they don't know any other way of doing life. So it's also the ability to feel, express, and manage a range of positive and negative emotions. And Matthew was talking about some of the positive emotions, because we tend to look at positive emotions and either suppress them or think they're inappropriate. If someone, I was accused when I was in a senior nurse in nursing of being excessively happy. How can somebody be excessively happy? And Penny, you always see the good things in everybody. And this was actually a complaint from a manager, and I look at it and go, you think that's bad that I see good in everybody? And it just made me laugh and chuckle, and I went, well, you need to look at this, because I actually challenged her with it, because what I actually said in the end was, yes, and I see good things in you too. And that kept her quiet. That kept her quiet for a few minutes. So anyway, we're going towards the break. I hope you can hear me better than you have. And we'll see you after the break.
Conscious connection to a more mindful world. Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Om Times Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Om Times, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntooak.org.uk.
1 in 3 adults has prediabetes. 1 in 3. That means it could be you, your football buddy, your football buddy, or you, your best man, your worst man, you, your dog walker, your cat jogger. While 1 in 3 adults has prediabetes, with early diagnosis, prediabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
So, hi, we're back from the break and we're talking about good mental health and the characteristics that involves. And we were talking about the ability to learn, the ability to feel, express and manage a range of positive and negative emotions before we went to break. And it's, the thing that comes up for me around this more than anything else is, learning, from reflection and learning from challenging situations that we've been in, but also just looking at and being able to manage those positive and negative emotions at any one time. And I was just going to hand over to Matthew to get his feelings on this. And then we went to break. So, hi, Matthew, again.
Hi. I think for me, I mean, my personal journey, I feel sort of very lucky, really, because I seem to have found something that really works. And one thing that really helped me is when I first started working with Pennie, just being told that there is another way. Because very much when people, whether it's anxiety, depression, whatever you sort of suffer with, generally when you go to the doctor and you talk to them initially and say whatever your symptoms are, whether it's you've been feeling down or really angry, because again we forget depression is actually anger turned within. A lot of people think it's sadness, but there is an element of sad there, but generally it's anger turned within. And people are told, like, you'll be on these drugs for the rest of your life. And I think sometimes we forget to question things. So obviously the doctors has done a lot of training and that sort of thing, so you see them as a figure of authority, and when they tell you something, the natural thing to do, or natural thing we do is believe them. And I've had clients that have been on various different medications since the age of around 14, teenage years, and they were told that they would always be on those drugs. So I think that can be one of the hardest parts around mental health, because people feel as though they're just being given a number and a packet of drugs and off you go, and they've got to then cope and deal with this thing that they don't actually know what it is. And let's not forget that the drugs that they're being given are just treating the symptom. They're not treating the root cause. And the root cause is what you need to get down to be able to have good mental health and have an understanding around how we work. And it's amazing how many people don't really think about all the lessons we learn at school. We learn about geography, we learn maths, English, different languages, because these are helpful in life. There's no class on how to be happy and how to do life. And actually, when you think about that, that's probably the most important lesson we could learn. And I think that's sort of what I'm putting out to people. It's kind of like this is not something we've been taught about. This isn't something that we have sort of knowledge around, because we weren't told as children how to be emotionally happy. And I think it's because over the years people don't really sort of speak out as much as they should around how to do life. Again, because there's a stigma around certain work, and I know Reiki, I take it very seriously. I know we had a good talk around what you would call the fluffy bunnies in America, and it's kind of like Reiki can be an absolutely amazing, energetic, emotional tool, but can be poo-pooed because of the sort of the image of it. But with these things, there's a very, very serious side, and they work. But again, people are being misinformed and taking certain comments for the truth, and I don't think that necessarily helps people. So I'll sort of throw it out there and talk the truth, because I think that's very much what when people get the wrong idea of something, they're told it's mental health, so they think, oh, there's something wrong with me, or well, I don't want to admit that to anybody because people will think I'm crazy. And then they're told that they'll be on the drugs for the rest of their life. So then they naturally start beating themselves up. So it's, oh, I'm crazy, I'm always going to be on these drugs, I'm never going to be able to do all the things I wanted to do, I could have done this. And that's just the start of it. And
they go down the plug hole.
Yeah, it is. It's like that ever-diminishing circle until you realise you're being sucked through the plug hole. But again, it's like, this is all the stuff, a lot of the stuff that people are being fed is absolute rubbish. You don't have to settle with mental health. You do not have to take a diagnosis for gospel. It's that I certainly would never recommend coming off meds without medical advice and a program, which is obviously something I install and Penny and I work very closely on with clients. And it's, but it's don't think that you have to be on these things for the rest of your life.
Well, thank you for saying that. That was one of the points that I was definitely going to get across to people, is you don't just stop antidepressants, you don't just come off meds without any help, support and guidance. Because depending on how long you've been on them, the backlash from coming off these things can be quite intense, and you need to have a support structure in place to help and support and guide you as you do these things. However, it can be done very, very successfully over a period of 3 to 6 months with the help and support of people who can be there for you and help you on an emotional level, help you on a thought level. So because when you come off these drugs, sometimes the thoughts and the negative thoughts that you have can be quite intense, so you need to have a support team in place. But what it ultimately does is allows you to become alive. These chemical drugs suppress, and they're incredibly suppressive. And one of the people I've just been working with quite intensely over the last few months, who has come off some heavy-duty chemical drugs, basically has stated quite plainly she has never felt so alive. And that is the point, is anything that depresses you or suppresses you will suppress your ability to feel joy, will suppress your ability to feel alive, be able to make new empowering decisions, and also have good relationships with others. Because what it tends to do, these drugs tend to isolate you into your diagnosis more than anything else. And when you have feelings of isolation, the last thing you feel able to do is to have good relationships with others. And I'm also just talking about real superficial relationships, because you internalize so dramatically when you're on chemical drugs. You don't even smile at people walking down the road. You couldn't be bothered. You don't even say hello or good morning. You don't have conversations with the tellers at a supermarket. You're just in your own world, and you become so isolated that that in itself becomes a problem, and it adds to the feelings of not being part of the world, which an awful lot of people who have mental health challenges don't feel like they're part of the world. They feel that they are aliens in a culture that they don't understand. And so that ability to form and maintain good relationships with others is a really good sign of good mental health. And the other thing, which is also a challenge to people when they are suffering from mental health problems, is the ability to cope with and manage change and uncertainty. And again, I have worked with many people with anxiety or who suffer from panic attacks or whatever. And if anything comes up that is a change for them or brings in uncertainty, that also brings up huge stress for them. And, you know, they will reach, again, I'm just remembering one case where she used to, I don't know if you've got it in the States, but it's a herbal remedy called Calms, and take fistfuls of Calms whenever anything stressful came up. And the way she described it was quite amazing. She just basically said, I gobbled them up, you know, a handful at a time. And it was the one thing in the pathology that really brought it home to me was the word gobbled. There's not many people who would talk about gobbling tablets. So, you know, when people get into that state, it's just like they have to do some over-the-top behaviour in order to deal with that stress or to deal with that uncertainty. So I know, Matthew, you've been also dealing with quite a lot of people who do have challenges and do have challenges with their mental health or good mental health. So I'm just handing back over to you for a few minutes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about my job, is just being able to deal with such a wide variety of clients. And one I'd like to share is what I did breath work with a soldier, and it was amazing because he pretty much had a 2-hour, or he said what felt like a 2-hour panic attack, and that's basically dealing with. Soldiers are told, when I asked him what's your feelings around, what would you say if I mentioned the word emotions, and he said vulnerability, and he said very much within the army, especially if you're out on the field, you have to suppress your emotions, because if you were to go into your emotions in that moment, you could potentially put yourself in danger. So he was so used to suppressing the fear and in that moment that it all came out when using an emotional sort of release technique. And he sort of said, oh, well, I thought I was going to come and deal with the anger, because that's what he was currently having issues with. And he said, I got to deal with something completely different. And I think that's like, we all think we have a handle on what's going on, but actually there's other things that we're not aware of that we've sort of suppressed over time. For me, very much it was sort of my anger issues sort of became an issue in late teens, and I remember trying antidepressants, and at the time people called them happy pills, because they were supposed to sort of cheer you up, and the view around it was, well, you take this pill and it would make you feel normal. Well, actually it's the complete opposite of that, because I called them zombie pills. It's great because you can't feel the really negative emotions that are up for you, but then you don't feel the good ones either. And sort of relating that to what you were saying about clients, that they've lived their lives, and the chemical drugs they've been taking have pretty much just block off a whole side of you. So yes, it's great you may not feel massively depressed and suicidal, but you'll never feel joy like you would if you weren't on those chemical drugs, which again just treat the symptom. So for me, I very early came off, before there was any dependence or anything like that, came off the drugs I was being prescribed at the time, and I was going out partying a lot, and pretty much, rather than use the drugs that the doctor was going to give me, I used alcohol and recreational drugs. And I think this is another point which people don't really look into and are maybe scared to sort of talk about and speak out about. But the degree of somebody's addiction or use of drugs and alcohol is just a reflection of how much pain they're in. And I think it's important to really say that, because I was one of those people, and I look back on some of my behaviours and I think, whoa, to do that kind of behaviour, and the only person I really hurt was myself. I was the one that was, and again the word gobbling, it was kind of like we were throwing drugs in our body like they were going out of fashion. And you think, yes, there's an element, people like to go out, they like to listen to music, they like to party, but to use the drugs to the extent that a lot of people are, you got to think, well, why do you need to throw that amount of chemical or alcohol or whatever it is into your system to cope with something? And then that's when I started doing the breath work. That's when I really started understanding my patterns and how I was using them and that sort of thing. And it was, a lot of people almost laugh it off when you say, oh, what's your poison? Because it's like everybody's got a vice. And the most scary one is, and I asked somebody this the other day, it's like, why do people drink? Why did you start drinking as a young child, or a young teenager, sorry? And they said, well, because that's what everybody does. And that's a pretty scary thought, and I'll leave you with that one, because to say that I drink because it's what everybody does, it's like, at what point did we need and swap to alcohol to survive? So just going into a break, and we'll continue after.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. Om Times Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. Om Times Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single Om Times endeavor. Host your show with Om Times Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, host of Om Times Magazine's flagship radio show, What is Going On. My passion is sifting through information, research, and innovations from new thought teachers, speakers, and researchers, pushing back the boundaries of what we know about life, energy, metaphysics, and the universe. I love shifting perceptions about who we are, why we're here, and how quickly impossible becomes normal when we open our minds, expand our awareness, and accept that the only limits that exist are those we place upon ourselves. So if you're the kind of forward-thinking, eager investigator of what lies beyond the current reality that most perceive, why not make a date to come play with me in the field of possibilities at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, 7 p.m. Eastern Time every Thursday, and together we can discover what's really going on.
We are talking about your life. Ever wonder, is this as good as it gets? No, it could be so much better. At Acorn to Oak, we know you are seeking more happiness, joy, unconditional love, financial freedom, passion, and purpose. Find your unique mojo and live an extraordinary life. Want to know more? Contact us at our website, acorntook.org.uk.
Long ago, you wouldn't think of galloping on a horse while doing calligraphy, and you wouldn't have attempted to ride your bike while typing a letter. Yet you think you can safely operate a multi-ton vehicle while texting? Behind the wheel is no place to multitask. If you want to BRB, drive now and text later. Lives depend on it.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, Noise, and the Ad Council.
So we're back from the break. Again, we're talking about World Mental Health Day, and I suppose this section of it, I would say, our government's doing enough? Are people actually taking this seriously, and especially the mental health of our young children, our teenagers, our young adults, but also our older people, and looking at how much money is given to research, how much are we actually caring for each other? We are a global family. There is, the family of man, and that also includes the women and the children and everybody else. But, do we actually do enough in our communities? Are we actually looking at it and going, saying hello? Do we know our neighbours? Are we actually caring? Will we stop and just talk to people who need to be talked to because they feel isolated or lonely? And it's really important that we all step up to the plate here, not just expecting the government agencies to pick up the slack. So again, I know Matthew was talking earlier on, so I'm just handing over to him to find out what he thinks about this.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because it's kind of, as I said before the break, it's like, how did it get this bad, where we started using heavy amounts of, whether it be alcohol, chemical drugs, or recreational drugs, whatever it be. And it is that we kind of got lost a little bit. I remember back in the 80s to talk about when life seemed simpler, when we didn't have as many distractions, when the pressure to look a certain way and be ultra successful was not as, or didn't seem important. Whether that was just my experience or not, I don't know, but it does seem that we've lost the simple things that Penny was just mentioning. So it's kind of like, how many of you talk to your neighbours regularly and look out for each other and have a good hub of community? And even if the community isn't living around you or in direct contact, it's do you have a healthy group or community online where you can reach out and get help and support from people that you know, sort of people that are on the same path, or just generally in the same sort of living the same sort of life. And it's that I think we've lost that sense of being, because life does seem personal. I mean, if you took every situation personally, by midday most people would be so depressed because that person didn't say hello to me in the morning, and nobody looks at me or gives me any attention. And it's not necessarily about getting the attention, but it's about getting the feeling intention met. So there's
the feeling of fellowship, I think.
Yeah, there's nothing better, I think, than walking down the road and saying hello in the morning and saying, oh, good morning, and it's like, yeah, it is a good morning, because ultimately we've won the cosmic lottery every morning, because we wake up and hey ho, we're still alive, so we get another chance and another day. So why are we all not excessively happy in the morning? You think we wake up and think, oh, not this rubbish again, rather than, sweet, I'm alive, I've got another chance of making my life better. And so we've naturally got into this pattern of being negative, and I think it does very much come down to the little things. It is having that family around you, whether it's blood relatives or soul relatives. I think more often than not we can resonate with some of our soul family more than we can our actual family, but I think that's probably because our actual family know where all the big red buttons are and insist on pressing them a lot. But
with alarming regularity.
Yeah, and you've got to laugh at it, because families are families, and it is that you may have hissy fits with them, but when it all comes down to it, you love them deeply, and having a bit of a joshing in relationships is really important. And just to throw a point out, that I obviously worked in construction for 20 years, and I think the thing that stops or keeps people surviving that are dealing with mental health in building is the joshing, because you can go to work and have a laugh, and very few guys are personal with their insults, and if they are, they're usually quietened very quickly, because within the building trade it's like everyone loves having a bit of banter, but not at anybody else's expense. So they use humour during the day just to get by, and it reminds me of laughter yoga and the theory that the brain doesn't know whether you're laughing because you're finding something funny or whether you're faking it. And once you start laughing, you start thinking, oh, that's crazy, I'm laughing at nothing, which then makes you laugh even more, and before you know it, you're hysterically laughing. And using some of these little tools in your life can make a big difference, but it's that connecting with people and saying hello and having a little conversation can turn your morning from being just looking at the floor and not saying hello to anybody to feeling great because you had a conversation. And when you do connect with people, it's amazing what you learn, and amazing what you learn about yourself and them as well. But we seem to be missing this human connection. Everyone feels massively disconnected because nothing seems, or a lot of things don't seem genuine. More people are...
I think you're very right there, and it's also because people just don't take the time to be interested in somebody else. And it was real interesting. As I was saying at the very beginning of the show, we've been travelling today, so we've travelled from Hampshire through Dorset to Devon and into Cornwall, which was about 3.5 hours. And in America, that's not a huge distance, but it's a big distance in the UK, because we're only the size of New York State, for heaven's sake. And so it's a fair distance, and it was really quite interesting. When coming into Devon, it was like I stopped for a quick break because I think my legs had gone numb, and I was definitely needing a cup of tea, and got it out, and there was just a cafe there, and I walked into the cafe and said to him, it was nearly lunchtime, so I thought, I fancy something to eat. And, being I'm not a vegetarian, I had a bacon sandwich, or like we like to call them in the UK, a bacon butty. And I said, can I have a bacon butty? And the guy behind the counter basically said, no, we've run out. And he was actually cooking some of it, and I could smell it. And I just went, I'll make you one because you're so pretty. And he just, the whole thing, he was joshing me. It was very, very good by the time I ate it. And then took off and travelled for another hour and a half. On the joy and the companionship that he sent me away with, which was really nice. And we forget that just even those little social interactions can make our day or break our day. And, you know, for me, it's about paying it forward, you know, trying to have a smile on my face and actually having something positive to say to somebody, or even just a smile. And realizing that actually, you know, Paramahansa Yogananda, who was a great spiritual teacher, turned around and encouraged them to be smart. Whatever you be, just keep on giving them and keep allowing people who fear change, and so you pick that up and realise that by that balloon next to them for a while during the day. And you know, I couldn't impress more on people how everybody feels disconnected at times. Everybody, is it worth taking a step? And just really that a smile and a friendly word can help someone pick up those feet that feel like they're weighed down by tons of worry and anxiety. And in that, it just helps us move through the social stigma of because all mentors have, you know, incorporate people, expect people to take measures in society where, you know, it feels like we're fighting an uphill battle on occasion. And, you know, he was talking about joy, but it's not just we're not feeling the joy, we're not feeling the peace, we're not feeling the calm, we're not feeling like we're appreciated, we're not feeling like necessarily we're doing a good job, because the job description changes all the time and we're constantly having to up our game. So constantly, that leads to uncertainty, and that leads to feelings of poor self-worth, especially when we're having to minute by minute, not just day by day, but it's literally, you know, when I look at I receive per day, looking 300 to 400 emails a day. And, you know, we're constantly looking at opportunities, things that maybe are important, people writing their stories to me and asking for help, which is I have no problem with, because, you know, that's where my soul sings. But it's really important that, you know, we're constantly on the move, and, you know, technology is moving fast nowadays, but if you're not a computer whiz, then you feel like you're behind. And there's nothing worse for people than feeling left behind. And if you have, you know, a mental health issue, you know, maybe obsessive behaviour or whatever it is, can you imagine how that extra pressure of new technology and the new ways of doing things sends people. So anyway, handing back to Matthew again after I've had my little bit of a rant.
Yeah, to be honest, that's something I've sort of had over the years. There was very much at school, you either got well into computers or you didn't, and I was more into game consoles than I was PCs. So yeah, it's something I do actually struggle with using computers, but it's not something I enjoy, so I've learned to farm it out rather than sit there frustrated trying to do something I can't do. But yeah, just bearing in mind we have a couple of minutes left, so just to, I know I've thrown some interesting points out there, and another one would be, because I had to put a conversation with Penny. I remember when I was younger and I used to ask older women, my nan, my mum and other girls, well, what is it the girls really want? And I was always told that personality is the one thing that counts, and that's what really matters in life. And you look around yourself now, I'm sure it's the same in America as it is over here. I know there's a program around a certain family that all seems about looks, and you've got to look like this, and your boobs have got to be this big, and your bum's got to be that big, and then the next year it's the other way around. So you've got all these women that are shoving all sorts of things in different parts of their bodies just to keep up with the look, and it made me think, if personality is what matters, what's driving all these women to do this behaviour? And it is that they're lost, and it's trying to put on a mask and be somebody else rather than connect with a genuine person.
And their lack of...
Yep. So we're vastly coming towards the end of the show, so thank you very much for listening. I hope some of this has resonated and helped you, and we shall speak to you next week.
Take care and have a good week.